this interaction, what we do when we talk about expert talk with GNC is that we will cover various health topics which are related to health. When we use the term health, we are not merely limiting ourselves to absence of disease. We are talking about physical health, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, social health, and a balance of all these, which ultimately lead to well-being. So the logo of GNC is also live well. So that logo is personified when we talk about all these things. And this is what GNC is always trying to attain: best possible health for everyone. Now, having said that, we have started this initiative wherein we will be bringing in experts and they'll be talking about various aspects of health so that our consumers and our followers can benefit from them. So this is the fourth session in this series. We have already had three sessions. We had a session on exercise and proteins. We had a session on how diabetics need to take extra care. We had a session Saturday on how to prevent wrinkling. So today we have a session on how to maintain a healthy gut, which will ultimately help you prevent COVID-19. So before starting, I would like to read a few lines about Ms. Manjari. She has been a clinical and functional nutritionist with over 22 years of experience, and she has worked with various top-notch hospitals in this country. She is Masters in Therapeutic Nutrition and Clinical Dietetics. She has an advanced certificate in intravenous nutrition and chelation. She is a diabetic educator, an on-call nutritionist, and a weight management expert. She has written articles in various daily newspapers, which include Times of India, Hindustan Times, The Hindu. She had been a panelist on various news channels, include CNN TV 18, NDTV, Z News, Mirror Now, and many more to say. She's an expert with Delhi Half Marathon, and she has been helping runners to a great extent. So this is something really interesting. And we have also mentioned that she is now conducting workshops for elderly. One of them is HelpAge India. So this is quite an introduction, ma'am. So welcome to this talk. And I would also like to welcome our audience. So we will talk about this topic, and at a later stage, we will take questions from the audience. So ma'am, my first question to you is, you have mentioned that gut is a healthy gut is a way to protect yourself from COVID-19. So my first question is, what do you mean by a healthy gut?
Okay. So the intestines, which is essentially the small intestines and the large intestines, are the part of the gut that we are talking about now. Of course, the gut starts with the esophagus, stomach, and the intestines, but we are only talking about the small and the large intestine. If you look at the intestines, the inner lining of the intestine is squamous epithelial cells. These are small square-shaped, tile-shaped cells that line the intestines. And these cells that line the intestines are really tightly bound to each other. Like tiles on a floor, they're really cemented to each other. Similarly, these cells are also tightly bound to each other, and they give a good protective covering to the inner lining of the intestine. But what happens is, as we go through life and we expose ourselves to various toxins. Now, these toxins could be medicines, antibiotics, they could be chemicals in our food, they could be the environmental pollutants that we take in, the pesticides, insecticides, all these things, and also things like stress, the building up of stress and the wrong type of neurohormones, that causes the intestinal lining to become unhealthy. Those cells start becoming injured, and we call it latent inflammation, which means the lining is now inflamed. It's no more a very intact lining, but there is inflammation. Later, the inflammation becomes so much that it creates gaps between the cells, and it creates something called the leaky gut. So a gut which has an intact lining, now has channels through which the wrong things can enter our systems. And that is what we talk about when we say a healthy versus an unhealthy gut. A healthy gut is gut which has an intact upper lining and is able to therefore only absorb, assimilate the things that it should be doing. But an unhealthy or an inflamed gut is a gut which, because of our exposure to various toxins or stressors or chemicals, becomes the cells become, they become inflamed, the lining becomes inflamed, and there are small gaps between the cells, creating something called the leaky gut. And that is how the major difference between a normal gut and an unhealthy gut.
Right, ma'am. So, ma'am, so what should we do to have a healthy gut?
Yeah. So what happens is, to give you an example, if I cut myself, let's say this is my hand and I have a small cut on the hand, that's an injury. If I do not do anything to that, in a few days the injury will get healed on its own and the cut will go away. But if I keep injuring myself at the same place every day, then this injury will become latent, chronic, or it will become an inflammation. And this is what is happening. We are injuring our gut on a daily basis because we're probably stressed almost every day with the type of work and the type of lives we live. We are almost every day probably eating out. We are missing out on micronutrients. We are also exposing ourselves to these toxins, chemicals, pesticides, insecticides. All of them are constantly injuring the gut. So what I can do to keep my gut healthy is, one, I try to reduce my stress level. So that is why the importance of having good mental health. So reducing stress, reducing your exposure to toxins. So cutting off or eliminating food which has a huge toxic load to it. Reducing as much as possible your exposure to medications which are not required, things like antibiotics, very strong non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs that we keep eating, we keep popping in Disprins and Saridons and, all forms of antipyretic medications. And also things that we, things like pollutants that we expose ourselves to. If we could reduce that exposure and cut down on our stress. And the third thing is improve our food. We'll go into the details of the food later. Improve our nutrition. We can keep the gut lining more healthy. We can in fact heal an inflamed gut, We can actually reduce the inflammation over a period of time.
Well, there is a lot of talk about detox diet. So in the past few years, we have been talking a lot of it.
Yeah.
So what exactly is a detox diet?
So a detox, essentially, the premise of the word detox is to be in a space where you're able to reduce the toxic load in the body. So for example, to give you a very simple example, I eat food which is probably cooked in an aluminum pan. Aluminum itself, when you cook food in an aluminum pan or you pack food in an aluminum foil, aluminum is a very potent toxin. It enters the hot food and it eventually enters my body. And every day when I get exposed to that aluminum, it's a toxic. It's a toxic substance and it can create inflammation. You also know that aluminum is carcinogenic and neurotoxic in nature. So now we're of course talking about the gut. So when we say that we are looking at detox, we are trying to, one, remove all these toxins from our body. So you don't cook in aluminum, you don't pack in aluminum, you cook in other healthier metals, or in clay, or in glass, or in stone, or maybe a cast iron thing. You don't pack in aluminum, you instead pack in a cloth or in butter paper. So that way you're removing toxin. That is one way of detoxing. The other way of detoxing is that when we have a toxic load in our body, a lot of things that are called micronutrients, for example, magnesium, zinc, selenium, some antioxidant vitamins, for example, vitamin E, vitamin C, vitamin A, and many nutraceuticals and many herbs can become detox substances. When you consume them, they are able to bind with these toxins and flush them out from the body via the detox mechanisms that we have, whether it is the kidney, the liver, the skin, the lungs. So because we're able to use food or nutrition or nutraceuticals to remove the toxicity from the body, that is the concept of detox. And we know that there is something called an antioxidant, things which bind with free radicals and toxins and are able to remove them from our body. So there are a lot of amino acids, by the way, also, for example, glutathione, non-acetylcysteine. These are all amino acids which are also detoxing amino acids. They can reduce toxicity from the body.
Great, ma'am. So my next question to you would be, we did talk about what is a healthy gut, what are the things which are causing the gut to become unhealthy. So what role does diet and nutrition play in maintaining a healthy gut?
I can say it's almost 70 to 80% of 70 to 80% of what you eat will eventually determine how healthy your gut is. Also, Dr. Vivek, as we go ahead, we're talking about the gut, but we have to remember that we're talking about the gut because we want to understand that our immunity also lies in the gut. And that is why we're talking about it today. So, food has a very big role to play. I can categorize food into two major categories: food which is inflammatory and food which is anti-inflammatory. Inflammatory means food which injures my body or causes injury or inflammation. Anti-inflammatory means food which heals my body, reduces the toxic load, reduces the inflammation in the body. So if I had to broadly, and I've shared slides, maybe we can share them later in the while we go through the presentation. There is a category of foods, for example, simple sugar, sometimes gluten, dairy, which may have a lot of hormone load to it, lot of products that have excess sugar or salt added to it, refined oil. So there are a lot of foods which are inflammatory, which cause inflammation to increase. So they are the substances that can hurt your gut. And there are foods that can heal, like we discussed. There are herbs and spices, healthy fats, some forms of some micronutrients. All of these can reduce the inflammation, so they can keep the gut healthier. So broadly, foods are either inflammatory, which means they increase the inflammation in the gut, or anti-inflammatory, which means they decrease or heal the inflammation in the gut.
I think now we have enough audience, so we can start with your presentation so that
Yes.
people benefit out of it.
Yes.
So,
Do you want me to share, Dr.
yeah. Please. It's for the betterment of the audience.
Yeah.
You can share your screen and share your presentation.
So we're talking today about strengthening the gut immune axis. The gut and the immunity, they're directly linked to each other to how to fight not just COVID-19, which is the pandemic that we're going through, but generally every other form of infection, especially viral bacterial infections. If you look at immunity, don't get into the technicalities of this slide, but if you look at immunity, there are two types of immunity. One is natural immunity, which is the white blood cells, the monocytes, the natural killer cells that we are born with. And the other form of immunity is the adaptive immunity which we develop over time as we get exposed to various pathogens. So when I get exposed to a pathogen or a disease causing agent, it could be a virus, it could be a bacteria, it could be a fungi, my body develops specific type of immunity against that particular virus or bacteria, and that is known as adaptive immunity. And this is essentially done by the B cells and the T cells. And this adaptive immunity is dependent on how healthy you are. The more healthy you are, the better your gut is, the better your hormonal balances are, the higher will be your rate of immunity. That is why people who have diabetes or who have cancer or who are very elderly do not have very high immunity because they have compromised health. The minute your metabolic health gets compromised, your immunity will also get compromised. So adaptive immunity is what we are focusing on, which is the type of immunity which I develop as I contract different forms of pathogens. Okay, so when we're talking about immunity and the gut, there are three major nutritional strategies that we'll be using. One is eating food which reduces inflammation. using those micronutrients which are directly responsible for improved immunity. So they are the superstars of immunity. And the third is, of course, restoring the gut. So if you have the gut which is not in the best space or shape, and so you restore the health of the gut. For example, if somebody has acidity or reflux or they have constant constipation, all of it has to be corrected for the gut health to be removed, to be restored. So we'll be focusing on anti-inflammatory diets. We were also talking about, I and Dr. Vivek were also discussing about something called the leaky gut. You see the small diagram, it very simply explains what's happening. What happens is that in these outer lining of the cells of the gastrointestinal tract, they are really bound to each other, cemented to each other very well. But as we get exposed to more and more toxins in our life, stress, it could be foods, it could be medicines, it could be pathogens, it could be even liver which is fatty. All of it causes this outer lining of the intestine to become inflamed and eventually develop leaks between its cells. And these channels of leaks make the gut leaky. And once the gut is leaky or it has these channels, it allows the harmful things to enter our bloodstream. And that is why it is very scary, you see, because otherwise the outer lining of inner lining of the gut can save you, and it will not allow all these toxins like medicines or chemicals or pesticides, insecticides to enter, because it becomes a safe, separating or a shield. But when it has leaks or it has channels of leaks inside it, then all these unnecessary toxins can enter the system. And when these toxins or drug toxins or other forms of toxins enter our system, they directly affect our immunity, because our body starts now working for these toxins instead of working on the pathogens that we are exposed to. So I am constantly trying to fight these toxins, and so I don't have a balanced immune system to fight the pathogen. For example, at this point we're trying to stay away from the COVID-19. So that coronavirus we are not able to fight because your body is innately already fighting with the toxins. So your immune system is already occupied, and it also creates a condition of autoimmunity. So if I had to look for the causes for an unhealthy gut or a leaky gut, these are the major causes. When I say nutrition, it essentially means bad nutrition. If you're eating the wrong food, if you're eating unhealthy food, if you're micronutrient deficiency, that could be a cause for leaky gut. Pesticides, insecticides, so we eat a lot of food, in an urban setting, which is exposed to these chemicals. Environmental toxins, for example, I live in a city which has high levels of pollution. I might be working in an area where there is industrial waste. I might be, exposed to a lot of perfumes and room fresheners. All of these are environmental toxins. Then people who do not sleep well, are working very late, getting up, who have broken their cardinal rhythm, they will also have an unhealthy gut. People who are exposed to too many bacterial infections, they have flu repeatedly every year, they have flu twice a year, all of them will have an inflamed gut. Mold, of course, will not go there. Neurological trauma and medication. So neurological trauma here, essentially, we're talking about people who have mental health issues, people who have depression or are extremely angry or have anxiety or have any other form of mental health issues. They will also have an unhealthy gut. And medication. So nowadays we really keep popping in pills for everything, from because we probably live always in an AC. We always might have a stuffy nose, and we might have to take a bronchodilator. We might have to take a pain medicine because the way we sit and work on our computers, we have back pain every day, so I have to maybe pop in a pill for back pain every day. Or people take medicines for headaches, for acidity. All these medications also injure the lining of the gut and create a leaky gut. You can, of course, reduce inflammation through food. And Primarily, there are 4 things in my food that I can do to reduce inflammation. The first is healthy fats. Not enough has been said about it. People have been really scared of eating fat. Although in our houses, if you see just a generation back or maybe a couple of generations back, if you look at our grandparents, ghee was literally, people would eat dollops of ghee, like literally a serving of ghee with every meal they ate. So they were not scared of fat. Now we are scared of. In fact, the type of fats we eat now are industrial fats, refined oils. So we have to change our refined fats into healthier fats. So coconut oil, ghee, homemade butter, olive oil, all these are mustard oil, all these are healthier fats. So that's one way of reducing inflammation, because fats can really improve the mucosal lining. The mucosa that lines the intestine, the mucus, it is composed of around 80% water and 20% fat. So healthy fats improve the mucosa and keep the gut intact. The second is intermittent fasting. I'll go into the details in the next slide. The third is hydration. Never can we speak enough about the importance of drinking enough fluids, specifically water. Again, as I said, the mucus is made of 80% water. So people who are not drinking enough water, maybe because they forget to drink, or they're not sweating and they don't feel physically thirsty, or they're in air conditioned climates all the time, temperature controlled, so they don't feel the need to have so much water. And when you reduce your consumption of water, you do not have enough water to even work on basic metabolic pathways. It compromises the function of the kidney, the liver, the gut, everything. So hydration is extremely important. And there are certain herbs or immune modulators that we'll talk about as we go ahead, which can improve the gut. It can strengthen your gut. Okay. So we of course talked about, there are 4 things we're talking about. Healthy fats. The first was healthy fats. As I told you, that fats, most of us have switched to refined fats. We're eating vegetable oils and processed oils made in factories. If you, for example, eat outside, or you eat a bag of chips for snacks, not only are you eating high calorie, high sodium food, you're also eating the worst form of oil. Typically, palm oil is used in commercial snacks, and this is the worst form of vegetable oil that you could eat. So refined oils have to be stopped, and healthier fats like nuts, seeds, ghee, healthy white butter made at home, coconut oil, mustard oil, all these, and of course a little bit of olive oil, all these are healthier oils that have to be taken. And healthy fats are very good. And the concept that fats make you fat is really a completely outdated concept. It's the carbs that are making you fat. So eating healthy fats is a good idea. It also is very good for your gut. The second thing we're talking about today is something called intermittent fasting. A lot of us do not understand that our body, for it to heal, you have to let it be, which means that if I keep using my car always, it will wear out much faster. Yes, for every machine, there is a lag or a rest time. Similarly, our bodies need a time for rest. One of the ways to rest is to improve your sleep, which means 7 to 8 hours of uninterrupted good sleep at the right time is a great way of restoring the health, improving gut health also. Another way of improving the gut health is to leave the gut empty. If you're constantly eating, the gut is constantly digesting and assimilating. Only when you leave it without food for some time will you be able to give it the capacity to heal itself. And that is the concept of intermittent fasting. And in India, we always did that. Yes, we finished our dinner by 6 or 7 in the evening before the sun would set down. And we would only eat after maybe taking a shower and praying. So what happened was we were fasting from, let's say, after 7 or 8 till 9 or 10 in the morning. That was the regular. Nobody got up and just had brushed their teeth and ate breakfast. We would do our work, we would then shower, pray, and then eat our first meal. So if you look, and that is why we were much healthier maybe a couple of generations back, because we were not eating late, we were not eating too early in the morning, and we were able to fast for 14 plus hours every single day. And that is what now lot of modern research talks about. It talks about how you can be fasting for more than 12 or 14 or even more, up to you, yes. But the more you fast, and specifically around 14 to 16 hours, you're able to do multiple things to your body. The first thing that it does is it improves the hormonal imbalances in the body. It improves, of course, a lot of abdominal fat around the viscera, around the midriff is lost when you do intermittent fasting. Cellular repair, all the dead cells die and the good cells come into circulation, the stem cells come into circulation. So fasting also improves the type and quality of cells in your body. It reduces inflammation, also reduces inflammation in the gut. Fasting is a great way of increasing your adaptive immunity. So the immunity we're talking about that we require to fight a new pathogen or a new bacteria or virus is adaptive immunity, and that improves when you fast. That develops it, your body gets a chance to work on its immunity. And it also improves your mental health or your cognitive health. So fasting is an extremely good way of restoring the gut health. So this constant eating is something we have to get out of, and we have to restrict ourselves to eating in a limited time. 8 to 10 hours of the day we should be eating, and the rest of the time we should leave our gut empty for it to restore and heal itself. So I'll go back just to, so remember we were talking about healthy fats, intermittent fasting. And before that, I talked about anti-inflammatory diets, foods which reduce inflammation. So I'm going to take you through a set of foods that increase inflammation and a set of foods that decrease inflammation. So there are foods that increase injury to the gut. For example, all forms of sugar, all forms of high fructose. In fact, sugar which is commercial sugar also, for example, sweeteners or sugar alternatives or agave nectar, maple syrup, high fructose corn syrup, all these eventually cause the insulin to spike in the body and create inflammation or injure our gut. Excessive alcohol, we already know that. All forms of processed meat. So you can eat meat, but processed meat such as sausages, bacon, ham, American meat specifically, all, dairy is a very gray area. A lot of people know that milk is healthy, but some types of milk, if you can eat a little bit of yogurt, it's always better than eating regular milk. Or, soft cheeses are not healthy. Hard cheese is healthy. We'll go to that. Sugars we discussed. Now, what has happened is there's a lot of people, we are putting off a protein called gluten. Gluten is found in wheat. It's found in oats also, because oats is processed in the same machines where wheat is processed. Gluten, a lot of people think that gluten can be eaten. So some people are able to tolerate gluten. For them, it is okay. But for a large population, gluten becomes an inflammatory thing. So cutting down on wheat or maybe removing it from your food for some time will reduce the inflammation, improve your gut health. Because over the years, wheat has been highly genetically modified, causing the gluten to become a very difficult protein. The ratio of the different proteins in gluten has changed, and it's become difficult for our human body to process. Then when we process our food and make it simple, we polish our food. For example, white bread, white rice, pasta, all of it is white flour. This white flour is also highly inflammatory. So instead of eating white flour, you eat whole things which have the bran or the germ intact. Then all foods which have transitional fat which does not exist in nature but has been hydrogenated to become thick fat. So all forms of bakery has trans fat. So that is all inflammatory. And we also discussed about vegetable oils, the modern industrial oils that we consume. Processed food not just chips and snacks and crackers, but also breakfast cereals and processed juice and everything that is coming out from a box, tin can, Tetra Pak. Of course, desserts because they are higher in sugar. So if I had to sum up the foods that are inflammatory, we start with sugar. We go to white things, white flour, white rice, white pasta, anything that is highly processed. Then too much of milk as milk itself. You can better make paneer or yogurt out of it, wherein the sugar is converted, the lactose is changed. That's a better way of having milk. Gluten and wheat. For people who find that they get bloating with wheat, they can remove wheat from their diets for some time. Simple carbs we discussed, vegetable oils or refined oils, and processed packaged food. These are the major categories of food that cut down the health of your gut or cause inflammation in your gut. So these are best avoided. There is, of course, a category of food which can help you, which can heal you, or which is anti-inflammatory, and that is, if you see these foods, we will start with the healthy fats here. So if you look at healthy fats, it's olive oil, cow ghee, white butter, coconut oil, mustard oil. All these are healthy oils. You also get healthy fats from nuts. So walnuts, pistachios, almonds, pine nuts. Nuts which have less sugar in them are also very good sources of healthy fats. You can also get healthy fats from fish. So fish is a good way of eating meat. Of course, nowadays you have to see where the fish is coming from. It should not have mercury or lead in it. But big fishes like Arctic fishes, those who eat fish can eat a little bit of fish to keep the gut healthy. So those are fats. Besides that, a lot of vegetables can decrease inflammation. So all forms of dark green, anything that is colorful. Actually, if you look at color in a vegetable, these colors are antioxidants. They may be things like, for example, there is beta carotene, there is anthocyanin, there is xanthophylls. All these are antioxidants. These are the pigments that give the color to your vegetables. So all vegetables that are colorful, from dark green vegetables to aubergines and bangan or brinjal, to leeks, all forms of reds, tomatoes, and peppers and bell peppers. Everything that is colorful, all these colorful vegetables are very, very good, and they contain a lot of antioxidants, and they improve your gut. Some whole beans and lentils, so instead of eating a polished wheat flour or rice, if you eat whole lentils or whole beans, some healthy, detox teas. Now, when we say green tea or matcha tea, it's better to have the fresh tea and brew it in water, or otherwise you can take even a packet of these teas. These teas have a lot of antioxidants, again, epigalatins, and they have catechins, and all of these also reduce inflammation in the gut. We also talked about the oils: coconut oil, olive oil, ghee, butter, healthy butter, white butter made at home, nuts, healthy fish. Another very important category of anti-inflammatory food that can work on the gut health is essentially herbs and spices. Indian herbs like mint, cilantro is dhania, celery, parsley, dill, or the spices that you use at home: turmeric, cinnamon, fenugreek, ginger, garlic, onion, even rosemary, cinnamon, asafoetida. All of these are spices and herbs that have highly anti-inflammatory properties. And when they are eaten in the right way, they can reduce the inflammation in the gut. So that's the list of anti-inflammatory foods. We're actually more bacteria than we are cells. In fact, there are around trillions of bacteria living in my body. And so there is, in the gut, there are a lot of healthy bacteria living. So we have to maintain those healthy bacteria for a gut to function normally. We call it the gut microbiome. Microbiome means the microorganism, and biome is essentially the living organisms. So these microbiomes, these healthy bacteria that live in our gut, are responsible for for better digestion, they reduce inflammation, they reduce mental health issues, they increase immunity in a big way. So I want to restore the healthy gut bacteria. And there are two ways of restoring the gut bacteria. That is eating things which are called probiotics and prebiotics. You must have heard of the terms probiotics and prebiotics. Essentially, probiotics are those foods which have live bacteria in it. For example, yogurt, homemade yogurt has lactobacillus bacteria in it. When I make pickle at home, for a homemade pickle, that has healthy bacteria in it. Or, so achar made at home. A lot of Japanese food, like, or Southeast Asian foods like kimchi, sauerkraut, miso, fermented cheeses. In India, we make kanji, apple cider vinegar. All these things are live bacteria. And when you have them, you're improving the bacterial count in the body. So that is one category of food, which is called the probiotics. These are things that contain live bacteria in them, and eating them improves the bacterial count, the healthy bacteria in the body. The other category of food is called prebiotics, which also helps in improving the gut bacteria, but they are not really directly giving the bacteria, but giving fiber. When you eat fiber, the bacteria requires the fiber to feed on it. So all forms of whole things, all forms of vegetables with fiber in it, all onions, leeks, garlics, carrots, all tomatoes. When you eat a vegetable, eat it with the skin. Try to eat fruits with skin as much as possible. The more fiber you have, that is essentially what the prebiotics means. The fiber is that which is not digested by our body. It is removed eventually from the body, but it is what the bacteria feed on. They require the fiber for them to feed on it. So food which has a lot of, salads, vegetables, whole things, all of them have a lot of fiber in it. So if you want to keep your gut microbiome in the right order, you should be eating probiotics, which is live bacteria, and you should be eating prebiotics, which is essentially food which has high soluble and insoluble fiber. And that will keep the gut bacteria going. Okay. I also wanted to talk about the major things that once you eat them, how they work and reduce immunity. Now, one of the simple things that we know that reduces immunity in our body is sugar, simple sugar. So when you eat simple sugar, what happens is the cells, instead of taking in antioxidants, here they've used, if you see this little diagram, they've used the vitamin C as an antioxidant, but there are multiple types of antioxidants. So when you take these antioxidants, and when you've had sugar with it, the cell will preferably absorb more sugar instead of absorbing the antioxidants. So what is happening is that even for hours after eating sugar, up to 4 to 5 hours after eating sugar, you will be not able to allow your body for its immunity to work in the optimum place. It will always have compromised immune function. And if you look at how we eat, we're obviously eating every 5 hours. I must be eating something which has sugar in it. It could be a carbohydrate, it could be bread, it could be a piece of cookie, it could be a dessert, it could be just tea with sugar, or it could be just something made with milk which has direct sugar in it. So all this sugar, when you keep taking it, it interferes with the immunity. It reduces the immunity of the body, or the immune capacity of the body. And that is why sugar is a major deterrent to a better immune function. And the last slide that I'm going to put today is about those nutrients and herbs and spices which are scientifically known to improve immunity with the gut. Of course, when you take, foods that are rich in vitamin C, enough of sunshine, vitamin D, vitamin A, micronutrients like zinc, selenium, even magnesium for that matter, omega-3 fatty acids, all these things work on the immunity of the body. These are workhorses. These are the primary things required for our immune function. And then there is a category of foods that you can eat which are directly having immune boosting properties that are antiviral. I'll give you an example. There is ginger written here. For example, ginger has a component called gingerol. It has something called gingerol in it, which is antiviral. It has antiviral properties. Or turmeric has curcumin in it. Curcumin and it can kill a lot of viruses. So it's antiviral in nature. Star anise, a spice that we use in our Indian homes. It's a star-shaped spice. It has something called the skimic acid, and this skimic acid is actually used to make Tamiflu, the medicine that is used against H1N1 infection. So these things like citrus fruits, green tea, berries, star anise, ginger, garlic, raw honey, turmeric, holy basil, which is tulsi that we call in India, resveratrol that is found in dark grapes, quercetin that is found in whole things, whole beans and lentils. All of them have immune boosting and antiviral properties. So I essentially had this to share. I'm stopping my screen share.
And there are some questions by the audience. So I would request you if you can take those questions as well.
Yes.
So the first question is asked by Ms. Prushali, and she wants to know if fasting helps. According to her, then why is it advised to eat every 2 to 3 hours?
Okay, so so Vrushali, thank you for the question. To start with, the concept of small frequent meals is something that was, we borrowed from American literature, and somehow we stuck to it for a long time, but we know now that it is not the right thing to do. We are talking about eating lesser. In fact, eating maybe 2 meals or 3 meals a day. There are people, for example, of course, I'm not saying you should do extremes, but there are actually people who do 1 meal a day. In fact, if you look at yoga, the Indian version of yoga, it only talks about eating 1 meal a day, or maybe eating 2 small meals in a day. So the small frequent meals or eating every 2 to 3 hours is actually a wrong sort of information or advice. And it may be required for people who are on conditions, for example, somebody who has cancer or who's on insulin, who has insulin dependent diabetes, they may need to eat more frequently. But for most people, you don't really need that much food. In fact, it's a good idea to eat much lesser than maybe eat every 4 or 5 hours and just 2 or 3 meals a day. That should be more than enough.
There is a question from Sushobita. She is asking, is fasting advisable during pregnancy? If somebody is expecting and is overweight or obese?
No, while you're carrying, or pregnancy is a very specific condition, a very critical condition also, and there are multiple things that are at play. So obviously fasting is not a good idea during pregnancy. In pregnancy, you're supposed to eat a wholesome diet as advised by your doctor or your nutritionist. Not the right time, maybe once a person delivers and gets, and even when you're nursing or feeding a baby, it's not a good idea to fast. Only when you're not doing something like carrying a child, or, even for people who have chronic diseases, I would like to reiterate, anybody who has cancer or diabetes or is on serious medication or undergoing dialysis or any other such chronic diseases, they are also not advised to fast unless they sit down and work it out with their, doctor or nutritionist, whoever is looking after them. And definitely not during pregnancy, not advised during pregnancy.
So Megha wants to ask that curd needs to be had in its original form, or using it in margarine, kadhi will also help.
Yeah, see, why are we talking about curd is essentially it's one easy way of taking the probiotics. You have You can set curd at home, allow it to become a little sour when it has a high, so khatta dahi, which we call in India. So little sour curd has very high amount of healthy bacteria, not just lactobacillus, but other bacteria also. And that is how you can, but when you cook curd like curry, or when you use it for marinating, some of the bacteria will not be able to survive that temperature. So you can use it to make a marination or curry, but then it will not serve the function of giving the right bacteria to your body. So, but of course, you can, not the best way to have it. It's better to have it raw. Just fresh set curds are always better.
So Chetna has two questions. What is resveratrol? What is quercetin?
Resveratrol is essentially an antioxidant. It's a pigment, like you have, all fruits that are orange and yellow and red have pigments in them. For example, they have pigments called beta carotenes in them, which give them the color. Similarly, there's a pigment resveratrol, which gives the color, which is the light purple or dark purple color. So grapes, it is also found to some extent in Indian herbs, and it is also found in a little bit of aubergine, the Indian eggplant. And it is a very potent antioxidant like other antioxidants. So that it's just a list, another category of antioxidant which is purple in color. Quercetin is a component. It's essentially, you can call it like an antioxidant. It's also like a pigment. It is found in foods which are whole. So whole lentils, whole beans, fruits and vegetables with the skin and the fiber intact will have quercetin.
So Anuja wants to ask, what is the substitute for sugar?
It's not about substituting sugar. Frankly, there are some plant-based sweeteners available, but I wouldn't want you to go there. The idea is to cut down on sugar. The idea is to reduce your consumption of sugar. If you're having 4 cups of tea in the day with sugar, try to reduce the sugar from 1 teaspoon to half a teaspoon, and maybe eventually have it without sugar. The idea is also to cut down on things like cupcakes and ice creams and jellies and candies, and things which have high amount of sugar in it, and also white flour, which is maida. So we're not looking at a substitute of sugar, we're looking at reducing sugar consumption.
We are saying artificial sweeteners are not healthy.
There are some of them that are okay, like for example, there are the chemical ones like aspartame and sucralose that can be used, but it's not like you can freely use them. Yes, then there are plant-based ones, like there is xylitol, or there is stevia, there is erythritol, which also can be used as a substitute. But it's not like that you, instead of putting two teaspoons of sugar, you put 2 cubes of that. That's not what we're saying. You can use a sweetener once in a while, but generally the idea is to reduce the consumption of sugar. We eat far too much sugar than our body requires. In fact, the American Heart Association says that 6 teaspoons of sugar children should eat, which is absolutely the wrong information. We require much lesser sugar. In fact, I could actually go without sugar for days and I'd be absolutely okay. So cutting down sugar is important.
Okay. So there's a question from Sheetal. She's saying, how do we know that we have a healthy gut? And what food we should relish, what we should eat religiously?
Yeah. So how do you know you have a healthy gut? Few things are direct indicators. First is the gut behavior itself, which means that if people who have reflux or acidity, people who have constant chronic pain, pain in their stomach, or every time they eat, they feel bloated, or they feel that there is a sense of belching, they have stiffness in the stomach, or they have chronic constipation. All of it shows that your gut is not doing well. So you need to work on your gut. If you don't have these symptoms, you are sort of okay. The second major point of your gut health is your skin. If you have clear skin, it means that your gut is good. For people who have a lot of acne or pigmentation also, they have a gut which is not very healthy. So all these are clear pointers that your gut is not doing well. And then you need to work on the gut health.
And the second question was, what should we eat religiously?
Yeah, you should eat religiously the anti-inflammatory foods, healthy fats, plenty of vegetables, some fruits, some nuts and seeds, some millets, some whole lentils and beans. These are the things you should be eating.
Fair enough. So Deepti has a question. If somebody wants to start with intermittent fasting, so what should be the building up phase? What should we eat in the building up phase?
You could do a very simple one. Start with a 12-hour, which is so easy to do. You finish your dinner by 8 and you eat only after 8. That's fairly simple to do, yes? You can easily finish your dinner by 8 p.m. and you can eat only after 8 in the morning. And if you do that, you are starting with the first simplest form of fasting, which is 12 hours of fasting. And when you're okay with it, you can pull your dinner a little more. You can finish by 7 and you can eat a little later in the morning, and that is how you can build up on the fasting. But you can start with a 12-hour of fasting, which is the simplest and easiest to do, and everybody can do it.
So Chetna has asked a different question. So she's talking about constipation. She wants you to define constipation, and she wants to know how bad it's for immunity and how many times should one pass stool. 3 to 4 times a day is known as IBD or constipation. So
Yeah, a lot of
plenty
questions.
of questions.
Yeah, the first to start with, we should have regular bowel movements. Like you have to get you have to defecate in the right way for your gut to be healthy. Essentially, that is waste that needs to be removed from the body. If you're not removing it on a daily basis, that is constipation. That is one. Second thing about constipation is that if you find it difficulty to pass stools and you have to take a sit in the washroom for a long time, or you have to drink something, or you have to have a laxative, that is also constipation. Also, constipation is when you don't are not able to pass stools at the same time every day. You don't know when you'll be going to the loo, and that is also a way a sort of constipation. At every day, you should be able to use the washroom at the right time in the morning and pass stools which are not difficult to pass. Then you don't have constipation. How many times? I think some people once or twice people pass stools in the day, so that is okay. 3 to 4 times is definitely more. Irritable bowel disease is slightly different from constipation. Irritable bowel disease is essentially like an inflammatory bowel, which is the bowel. What is bowel? Bowel is essentially your intestines, your small colon, the large intestine. So when the large intestine, the lining of the large intestine is inflamed, or it's called irritable bowel disease. So when you eat something, it irritates it, it causes inflammation. That is irritable bowel disease, and it's a type of a gastrointestinal disorder. It's different from constipation.
This is another question. If you want to take sugar-free tablets, are they good for health? What's the role they have, the impact they have on immunity?
In an ideal condition, we should not be eating sweeteners. Yes, we should not be eating sweeteners or artificial sugar substitutes, because they have multiple things that are happening at various levels. The first thing that is happening is they are made with chemicals, and these chemicals are not good in the long run if you eat a lot of it. And of course, it will impact immunity, because we know that every toxic that we take, every chemical that we take that our body does not require, we will reduce the health of our body, increase the inflammation of the gut, eventually impacting immunity. So, if you can avoid sugar free, it's a good idea. Once in a while, an odd consumption is okay, but ideally, if you don't eat it, it's a very good idea. Not to
Ma'am, I have a question. This is regarding probiotics. So we are seeing many ads on probiotics even on television. Yogurt is advertised to a great extent, and there are probiotic supplements.
Yes.
So what's your take on that?
Yes, so there are some probiotic supplements. We also give probiotic supplements like Econom and all that. We give that Sporolax, all those supplements we give. Essentially, what these supplements are, besides curd, which is, of course, we all know, these supplements are essentially a lot of bacteria that have been isolated, and they are you can, so sometimes people need a high dose of these probiotics because they have more serious concerns and more chronic inflammation, or they really need a higher dose of probiotics. Sometimes they may not get it from food. So then you can use a probiotic supplement. There are a lot of good supplements available. For example, somebody asked if Isabgol is a probiotic. No, it's not. It's a laxative. But there are some probiotics. There is Setu leaves. There are some leaves of which are also probiotic in nature. So, and there are also good supplements available which can be used as probiotics.
So there's a question from Anuja. What kind of biscuits she wants? She is, I think, in love with biscuits.
But not good for health. We know that. Yes, biscuits are, maybe you can have one once in a while with a cup of tea, but no guideline in health or nutrition talks about biscuits being healthy. Yeah.
So she
What would
also
be
wants
a
to
good
know about
replacement?
pulses.
Yeah. A good replacement would
Pulses
be
should not
nuts.
take.
A good replacement would be nuts. A good replacement would be something like a snack like a dhokla or something that you made at home, or some paneer that you saute at home, a little snack that you put together, some eggs, or some, you want to have a snack with your cup of tea, you can have some stir fried egg or something, or even vegetables or nuts as we discussed, or something made at home, but definitely not biscuits. So those can be the replacements of biscuits.
So she's also asking about pulses. How much pulses should one
Pulses
take?
are okay. I mean, you see, what happens is we are talking on a generic basis. But if somebody has a gut issue, then you get into specifics. For example, we look into food intolerance. We look into if a person is able to process a type of pulse of food properly. If they are not, then you get into specifics. But for a person who has regular health and a good gut, some amount of pulses are good. The important thing is you should eat more whole things. So pulses with the skin intact are better than polished pulses. So whole beans and lentils are better than pulses.
Chetna wants to know, if again restricted to probiotics only, she wants to know if a person is suffering from diverticular disease.
So
So
diverticulitis essentially is again a gastrointestinal disease. So diverticulitis or diverticular disease could be, these are diseases that develop over a period of time. I don't get irritable bowel syndrome. I don't have it today and have it tomorrow. Yes, over a period of time, my body will develop these diseases, which are essentially symptom based diseases. So all these diseases, whether it is diverticulitis, irritable bowel syndrome, reflux, acidity, all of it would become better with having probiotics. So probiotics are definitely advised, but I would always say that for a person who has any particular diagnosed illness, it is better not to take anything just because somebody talked about it, but to go and sit with your doctor and figure it out. But on a generic level, definitely probiotics are helpful for
So there's
diabetes.
a question which Sheetal wants to ask, is that gluten-free even when I don't have gluten allergy. So she's confused with this. I think why do we need
A
gluten?
lot of people are confused about gluten. A lot of people say, when for thousands of years we've eaten wheat, why should we go off wheat now? And why should gluten become a culprit now? So there are many reasons why gluten is becoming a culprit. The first reason is that we are living extremely sedentary lives. The fact that we are sitting so much and not doing enough physical work does not allow gluten to get processed properly. That is one. Second is wheat itself. You see, wheat was a small grass type of sort of cultivation, and now wheat is literally industrially grown. If you look at what the world is producing in the name of farming, it's essentially wheat, sugar, rice, soya. These are the major things that are being grown. So wheat is now very genetically modified for maximum yield, and in that process, the protein in wheat has changed. The gluten itself has undergone a change, and that is why a lot of people are not able to digest that. Another thing that has happened is that I have primary inflammation, maybe because, not because of gluten, but because of stress. I might be very stressed, causing inflammation in my gut, and once I have that, then I will not be able to digest. So I may not primarily be gluten intolerant, but because I don't have a very good gut, it will be difficult for my body to digest gluten. So I'm not saying everybody should stay off wheat or go off wheat, but if you feel that you have these specific symptoms like a lot of acidity, reflux, and you feel bloated after eating, you also feel, very sluggish. Many times you'll feel that when you eat wheat or bread, you feel very sluggish. You want to take a little nap, or you have this little brain fog. Then you can see if avoiding gluten works. And if it does, then you can go off it for some time, because you can replace, instead of eating wheat roti, why not eat besan roti or a millet instead? You know?
I think Sheetal's next question is already answered. She wants to know what to eat in gluten free.
Yeah. I think one thing before, Dr. Vivek, we end, I don't know whether more questions are coming, is that one
No,
thing.
I think we should summarize it. This is the last question, I think. This should be the last question. We had a deadline of 7 p.m. So I think just we can wind it off with this Sheetal's last question on gluten. And I
Yeah.
think we will close it.
Yeah, I wanted to reiterate the fact that today we're talking about how having a healthy gut is your predisposing factor for having better immunity. Because immunity is something that all of us will have to build up, because this pandemic and further more infections that will come are not just a month or a 2 month thing. Yes, this is a long term story that we have got into, and it's not just one pandemic that we'll be exposed to. We are constantly exposed to dengue, to so many other forms of infections, flu every year, H1N1, SARS, and all these will keep reoccurring because we have more and more global travel happening. And building your immunity is your first defense mechanism against any infection. And your immunity lies in your gut, and that is why we're talking about it today, that having a healthy gut via the right type of food that you eat can build up your immunity. And it's so simple to understand that if I eat the right thing, if I have a healthy gut, I reduce inflammation, I'll have great immunity. I mean, how simple, it cannot get more simple than that.
I believe in it. So, ma'am, I think now we all have clarity that we need to have a healthy gut if we want to have good immunity and to protect ourselves not only from COVID but from other diseases as well. So, I would like to thank you on behalf of GNC, on the behalf of the audience, and I would also like to thank the audience who had been so patient and who turned up next day to be a part of this event. So I would like to thank everyone. So thank you, ma'am. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Dr.